Intermediate Pastel Drawing Video 1, The Sketch. Here's the drawing of Amy and Ruby. This is what we're going to draw for this particular video. The sketch itself is basically a soft lead pencil, so you want maybe like a 2B lead, I believe is what I used, or even an HB would be okay, but you'd have to do really lightly with that because a little bit hard on the paper will actually cause it to make an impression, and you don't really want to do an impression on this because you don't want any lines to be noticed underneath the pastels. So basically I've got the photograph here that I'm referring to with my pencil. If you notice that I'm looking for the center of the photograph and comparing that to the center of the piece of paper that I'm using to do the drawing. The paper you're using does not necessarily have to be to scale to the photograph that you're using. So, if I'm using a 4x6 photograph, I don't need to have, let's see, 12 by 18 sheet of paper. I can use a different kind of sheet of paper, different size to scale, as long as I am keeping things in proportion. You can see on the right side of this paper there's a little kind of a darker line that I've put about an inch from the edge. That is where I'm kind of making my invisible edge of my drawing. On the top and bottom I don't need to do that because the paper is actually wider than it is tall compared to the photograph that I'm using. So I'm actually going all the way to the edge on the top and bottom, but I'm giving myself that invisible edge on the left and right of the paper just to kind of keep myself within proportion. I'm working from the center consistently throughout the sketch. I'm constantly referring back to the photograph, using my pencil to kind of eyeball the center of the photograph, and then of course once I've found my center on the paper that I'm drawing from, I consistently look to that center and kind of move out from the center. So I started off with my drawing on that center line, going from top to bottom, doing like pretty much that center line, and then from that point I moved out toward the right bottom, and so now I'm drawing the lower jaw and the hand on the bridle here on the image. As you can see, nobody's perfect. The great thing about sketching lightly is you can sketch a lot of lines if you do it lightly, so you can actually see what you're drawing, but at the same time you're not pressing hard enough that you can't erase your mistakes. So you make a mistake, no big deal, just erase. And going from the center, from where I'm working at, you can see I'm not doing a whole lot of detail. I'm doing enough to know where things are in the photograph and where I need to draw my heavy lines when it comes to starting to work with the pastels. You don't want to do all the little itty-bitty details because those are all going to get covered up when you start spreading your pastels on the paper. So the major things you want to do are the edges that define the shadows and the highlights. So any major edge or area that is significant for the drawing, like the jawline, the cheekbone, the eye, the bridle, those are all major things that you're working with in this picture, that if you do smear some of your pastel, you can still kind of see where you need to go from that point to make the next, more detailed sketch or variation to the actual drawing. So here I've finished working everything pretty much to the right of the center line. So now I've gone to the from the center, working out to the left, going up toward the top. So I worked a little bit on the mane coming down the top of the forehead and into the eye, and then I've made my way down, staying at that center line, making my way down to start giving more of the details of the face on Amy, and trying to get where the proportion should be, where it looks right, to make sure it's accurate, again referring to the center point on the photograph, and making sure that I'm putting her nose and her chin and the important areas of her face in the right location on the horse, proportionately to the center of the photograph. if that makes sense. I hope it does. You can see it's, again, you always can leave yourself enough room for error when you're doing a sketch prior to actually doing the full pastels, because if you make a mistake with the proportion, if you make a mistake with your drawing, which I believe I actually do a little bit in this sketch here of her face toward the end, I didn't like the way her eyes were in location to her nose. It didn't quite match up with what the photograph looked like, and without actually plotting points, which is another method you can do, if it doesn't look right, flip the picture around, kind of take a look at it and see, if something looks completely off looking at it upside down, more than likely it's off. So in doing that, it kind of gives you a different perspective for a minute, just to get your eyes kind of to be able to refocus. When you flip it back over the right way, usually that one thing will kind of pop right out, and you'll notice right away what you need to fix. So that's something I would suggest if you're having some issues and things just don't seem to be exactly how you think it needs to be or how it looks in the photograph. I recommend doing that, flipping it over or stepping away from it, coming back to it, and having fresh eyes to look at it, kind of thing. So here I've gone, again, to show how important it is to work from the center out. That big old ball of the helmet, if you started with that first, working toward the center, it might not be as accurate. So here we go. This is the sketch ready to actually start doing our pastels. So the next video will be just that, working with pastels. I hope you've had fun so far.